Good morning, everyone, and thank you for sparing your time today to join us as we release our end-of-year poll. This we've done religiously, continuously for the previous years, where we do gather views of Kenyans on how they perceived the year that is ending, and of course, their level of optimism for the year that we are yet to begin in a few hours tonight. We want to appreciate you for your continuous patronage with regards to coming to cover our polls. We don't take it for granted. So by name, I'm Jovin Wanyingo. I work with Infotrak Research. I will be sharing with you these findings for a survey that was commissioned by ourselves. It's self-sponsored as we celebrate our 20th year of research. And as I've mentioned, we've done this kind of researches year in, year out. The import of doing this research is just to keep the citizenry abreast of what is happening, and of course, to take stock of the year under review. So today we'll be sharing with you a snippet of the report that will cover how Kenyans rate the year that is ending today. And of course, like I've mentioned, we also want to look at the key issues of concerns that has been there, the directions of the country, how the country has been moving, and we'll give you a comparative analysis for some years, to be precise, 3 years, that is from 2022 to date, so that we can measure if at all there's been any positive change with these levels. So by way of methodology, nowadays we have adopted a more quicker way of data collection that we use through our call center. We have one of the state-of-the-art call center, and we did this through the computer-assisted telephonic interview, where through our database of Kenyans aged 18 years and above, we randomly selected 600 participants to participate in this research, which was later spread out across the 47 counties and the 8 regions. This 600 sample size give us a margin of plus or minus 4.001% at 95 confidence level, meaning if you were to do this research 95 times, we will get more or less similar results. And of course, if we look at the hit rate, we had a response rate of 96%, which means Kenyans were very receptive. Only a few declined to participate. That would be about 4% of those that were called who declined to give their views. If we look at the geographical distribution of the sample, this sample of 600, it was distributed, as you can see, in this particular table. And of course, region-wise, the region that had the least was the Northern Eastern, that we had to boost to 30. 30 is the minimal number accepted statistically for us to declare the results that we get, or the views or the opinions that we get from a region, to be statistically sound. Of course, with Rift Valley having the highest of 153 interviews. These were further divided into the different wards within those. So we sampled some wards within those regions. We kindly request you to remain muted For those that are joining, kindly request you to remain muted so that we don't get interruption. I'll just take you straight to the main findings, then I'll give you a summary of this in a short while. So we focused on the direction the country has taken, and we wanted to give you a snippet on how it has been from 2022 March to currently December 2024. Now, if you check within the year 2022 March, the country by majority, 66% stated it was headed in the wrong direction, with only 16% mentioning it was headed in the right direction. This turned for better, with half of the country in December 2022 stating the country was headed in the right direction. Remember, this is the period that we had just ushered in new government. So 50% mentioned the country was headed in the right direction, with only 18% mentioning it was headed in the wrong direction. When we moved to February, about 5 or so months into the year 2023, things almost went back to where it was in March 2022, with a total of 62% of Kenyans reporting that the country was headed in the wrong direction. 22% were of the opinion it was headed in the right direction. Came September 2023, it dropped slightly to 53%, still above majority, and 30% indicating it was headed in the right direction. So we can see, apart from December, the other months that we did this survey, more than a half of the country opined that the country was headed in the wrong direction. Moving on, into March 2024, 58% of those that we interviewed within that period stated, 58% stated it was headed in the wrong direction. Again, 19 right direction. In May, there are about 2 months, 63% stated it was headed in the wrong direction, with 19% right direction. When we went to September, half of the country stated the country was headed in the wrong direction. That is 50% and 19% constant figure of those that opined the country was still headed in the right direction. In December, this survey that we've just carried, you can see the shift by 26%. Where now 76%, the highest ever that we've always seen, stating the country is headed in the wrong direction, with only 9% stated the country is headed in the right direction. 14% cannot tell it's either right nor wrong direction, and with 1% declining or preferring not to state their stand. So you can see progressively how we have been. The year under review, 4 surveys above 50% stating the country is headed in the wrong direction. So we sought also to get the opinion of Kenyans on how they would describe this year 2024. A majority, 64%, stated it was generally a bad or a terrible year, according to their ratings. And 22% say it was an average year or just good, not bad. So they were katikati, with 14% stating it was generally a good and excellent or excellent year. So you can see a majority here stating that it was headed in, the country was generally a bad, the year was generally a bad or a terrible year. If you compare with the results that we released last week, it marries, because 60% of Kenyans had indicated they were not going to celebrate Christmas the same way they've done in the past. I believe that informs the reasons as to why they still believe it was a terrible year. If you check regional wise, those regions that perceived it to be a worst year were mainly 69 from both central and western, and a coastal Nairobi tying at 68%. That is regional wise. It's so surprising also for gender. Women generally perceived it as a bad year or a terrible year at 68%. With a majority of adults, it's 73%, the mature adults, 36 to 45%, describing it as a worse year. In terms of average, those who gave it an average score included Rift Valley at 27%, Nyanza 25%, Eastern at 23%. And men on this particular score, 26%, still a really lower figure, though double digit, stating it was an average year. And with those aged 18 to 26, the Gen Zs, stating it was an average, 32% of them, stating it was an average year. For those that had voted it as generally excellent, a good year, Northern Eastern, 2 in 10, 23%, stating it was generally a good to excellent year. Rift Valley, 16, Eastern Province, 15%. And of course, those that are the younger adults, 27 to 25, 18% also perceived it to be an excellent year. We've also given you the trend. Checking from 2022, you can see in 2022, 50% had perceived it to be a very terrible year or bad to terrible, with only 28% stating it was an average year and 22% mentioning is an excellent year. Last year, 62% stated it as terrible or bad year, with 27% saying it was average, 11%, half of what was there in 2022, mentioning it as an excellent year. When we progress to this particular year, 64% have declared it as a terrible year, 22 average, 14% mentioning it as a good or excellent year. So we can see that being bad has been rated across the 3 years. Had given this regional breakdown, but of course you can see in terms of each and every element, how would you describe the year 2024 by region? It was generally a bad year, was stated highestly in cost by 51%. The least was from Northern Eastern at 31%. It was a terrible year. The highest score was from Northern Eastern, 34. And of course, there's a tie between Western and Nairobi at 30%. When it comes to those who mentioned it was a bad or terrible year, the highest score were from regions that have scored 69, a tie between Central, Western, and of course the least score at 57 was from Rift Valley. Generally a good year. Here we can see the highest score of 13 from Nairobi and Rift Valley and of course Eastern. Excellent year. Those who rated it as being excellent, the highest score was 16% from Northern year. It was a good stroke excellent year, and that is a combined. Highest score was of 23% from Northern Eastern. It was just an average year. The highest score was of 27%, and this was Rift Valley. So after that, we went to ask them how they can project the year 2025, which we are ushering in a few hours. We asked them whether it will be the same as year 2024. It's been a standard question, or it will be better, or it will be worse than 2024. What is their projection? 3 in 10 are very optimistic, 30% mentioning it will be a better year than it has been in the year 2024. 12% stating it will be the same. There's no change. And 22% projecting it as going to be a worse year. It's going to be worse than it has been in the year 2024. Then, of course, we had 36% of the respondent who couldn't tell where to gauge. They don't know yet. The regions that had the highest optimism included Nyanza region at 42%, Western 35%, Eastern 32%. And of course, when we look at the gender split and age bands, men seem to be more optimistic than the women at 32%. Then the younger folks are more optimistic at 47%. That is the Gen Z bracket. They seem to be the ones that gave a higher optimism for the year to come. How does it compare over the years? You can see in the year 2022, whereas the optimism level with the new government, it was at 82%. And that also corresponds with the direction. Remember the year 2022, it was the only year that we had a score of 50% of Kenyans who believed the country was headed in the right direction. The optimism level was even more at 82%. And if you check last year, the optimism level was similar to this year at 30%. With those that are saying it was going to be same as it was in 2022, in 2023, were 19%. And those who predicted it was going to be a worse year were 21%. And those who didn't know were 30%. So we can see progressively there's an increase of 6% this year for those who do not know. We have only 1%, also an increase for those who are predicting year 2025 would be worse than this year. And a drop on those who feel it will be the same, and a constant for also those who are optimistic. And I have also talked about the optimism level. I gave the highest regions. And you can see in Nyanza, for example, in 2023, that is last year, 42% mentioned it was going to be better than 2023. It was going to be better. This is this year. Sorry for that typo. 42% mentioning that it was going to be better. Then same 12%, worse 20%. And those who don't know in Nyanza are 26%. Across the regions, I had mentioned the highest optimism are coming from Nyanza region, Western region 35, of course, Eastern 32, and Nairobi also, because there's only 1% gap between Nairobi and Eastern, 31%. Seemingly, Rift Valley has the least optimism at 26%. And of course, Central also has 26% optimism. When it comes to both male and female, you can see the male counterpart, 32 versus 29. Age band, only the age bracket of 47%, nearly an average score an average score, 47%. The least optimistic are those that are aged 46 to 55 years at 19%. You can see here, they had the least score of 19%, focusing on the year to come. So again, we wanted to check, how would you consider optimism? On how would you describe 2024? Then, of course, 70% mentioning it was an excellent year. It was generally a good year, 49%. It was just an average year, 36%. It was generally a bad year, 25%. It was a terrible year, 20%. Of course, same as in terms of just comparing how this year will be, same as 2024, it will be 6%, will be excellent. And yeah, it will be generally a good year, 13%, generally a bad year, or average year, 17%, generally a bad year, 9%, terrible at 10%. Moving on, we went to seek the opinions of each and every respondent, those who mentioned they were optimistic and those who were pessimistic. What were the reasons driving it? For those that are optimistic, they believe the economy will improve at 48%. Then their finances will improve, mentioned by 23%. The country will continue to witness development, 20%. The country will continue to witness or to enjoy peace, 14%. My business will expand or grow, 11%. I will get a job, mentioned by 1 in 10. I will get a better job, mentioned by 6%. Just having hopes and trusting in God, that is invoking their faith there at 6%. Reasons for those who are pessimistic for the year 2025, the leading here is economy. That economy will get worse, mentioned by 83%. My finances will get worse, 18%. My business will suffer, 9%. I don't think I'll be able to find a job, 9%. There will be drought or hunger, predicted by 8%. There would be continuous poor or bad leadership by 5%. High taxation, that has been one of the key issues mentioned by most of our polls, 3%. I'm likely to be retrenched from my job, mentioned by 1%. So these are the reasons that were mentioned by the people that we spoke to as to why they're either optimistic or pessimistic. So this is the profile or the demographic profile of those that we interviewed. Quickly, let me give you the summary of what we deduced from this poll. We have key 7 points as our takeaway from this poll. One is that the year has been a year of discontentment from Kenyans, and this is driven by the number, because the majority, 64%, who mentioned or who described this year as a bad year. You can see that is more than a half of Kenyans that we spoke to. And we can also see that it has been growing gradually. Last year it was at 62%, and now it is at 64%. So that a lack of declining, the declining views of Kenyans with regard to whether the year would be better is something that the government may need to really work, because these are driven by economic crisis that are bedeviling Kenyans, and the public displeasure that are rising due to the inability of most of the Kenyans to meet their basic needs. Then, of course, we are seeing the second key takeout is that youth remain the more optimistic amidst majority who are pessimistic. I had pointed out that the Gen Zs, age 18 to 26, remain the beacon of hope because they have given a higher rating at mids, whereas the average for every other age category were 30%, but for them, nearly 47% of them believe the country would or the year would be better. If you check with the older age, for example, 46 to 55%, who the optimistic level is only at 19%. Nearly the Gen Zs have doubled that optimistic level. Then we are seeing economic decline as the root cause for all these issues that are happening. That Kenyan's economy remained the top driver for optimism. You can see for those who mentioned that they have a lot of optimism for year 2025, either will get a job, their business will expand, the economy will grow. Those were some of the key highlights that they were giving. And of course, those who mentioned still that the country would be worse than the year 2024, still mentioned 83% say the economy will erode than it is currently we are experiencing it. Then, of course, they've mentioned retrenchment. They will be retrenched. They may not get a job. Their businesses will, the growth for their business will not happen. It will decline. So economic issues should take center stage. Then when it came to gender divide, women bear the brunt of economic hardship. You could see that the dissatisfaction for year 2024 was highest among women, with 68% rating it as a very bad or terrible year, as opposed to men that were much lower. So what do we need to do? We really need to address gender economic disparity, ensure that we have some economic stimulus that are meant to empower the women, e.g., giving them affordable health care, ensuring that the mother to child or the caregivers have access to good health care, they have support, and of course, giving them the financial muscle so that they can support or they can fend for their family. Another 5 key points from this survey is that there is trust deficit. Of course, nearly 48% still feel they lack or they remain with low confidence in government. 48% optimism, believing the government can deliver the economic improvement. Among the pessimists, only 5% specifically cite poor leadership. There's the mention of poor leadership as the main concern why the economy is dwindling. And of course, this is cited mostly in the urban area. So what the government need to do is to rebuild the trust, and this will translate into transparency, accountability, and of course, managing the public engagement so that every single progress that they do is visible amongst the populace. Then there's also regional disparity, whereas we are having optimistic regions such as Nyanza, Western, a bit of Northeastern. The other bands, which include Central Kenya, this seems to be a bit pessimistic, with the highest dissatisfaction of 69%, both in Central and, of course, Nairobi and a bit of Eastern. Then the last one is peace as a fragile source of hope. We've seen peace was mentioned by a number, that is 14%, that while public feedback largely negative, 14% of the optimistic citizens cite the continuous enjoyment of peace and stability in the country. And this peace, once it is maintained for a period or for a lifetime, it can give us a lot of hopes. And of course, Kenya must work towards ensuring peace throughout the coming year or the coming years. And of course, the coming years, there would be a lot of political realignment, or people starting to realign for the elections that are ahead. There is still need for us to maintain peace. Thank you very much for listening to us. If at all there's any question, you can share them now or post them in the chat box, and we can address them one by one. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lynn. Sid, Angela, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Jovin, thanks. That was a good rundown of the poll. I just wanted to add that we've done the analysis on the key issues alongside the direction the country has taken, just so that the journalists here and those who will be reading the poll can have the context as well on what the key issues were across the year, that then supports why they felt, those who felt that the year was a terrible year. So that information is there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll share that. Any other question? There being no any other question, those that have joined, if you drop your email addresses, we'll share this slide, this deck with you right away. And if you can also coordinate with Lynn, you can have it shared so that you help disseminate the information. We wish you a very good ending of 2024, a prosperous. Seems there are questions. Oh, sorry, their email addresses being shared. Please, Lynn, take note of those email addresses and forward the information. Bye for now. See you in the year 2025. Okay, I've been requested to take it a bit in Swahili. I'll do a quick highlight in Kiswahili for Citizen, and of course any other Swahili media house. So kwa majina naitwa Jovin Wanyingo. Leo tuliwaalika ili tuwape matokeo ya Francis. I'm already on. Yes. Sawa. Ndio naifanya sahi. Just doing the summary now. My apology. There's a request from Citizen. I summarize it in Swahili. I'll just do the summary in Swahili. So tulifanya utafiti mnamo tarehe 20 mwezi wa Disemba tukioji Wakenya 600. Tulitaka kujua maoni yao kulingana na jinsi nchi imekuwa na matarajio yao ya mwaka unaokuja. So kwa mtazamo ya Wakenya tumeona ya kwamba mwaka ambao umekwisha, asilimia kubwa ya Wakenya wamesema ya kwamba nchi inaelekea katika mkono mbaya. Hayo yalitajwa na asilimia 76 ya Wakenya, ikiwa tu asilimia 9 ya Wakenya ndio wanasema nchi inaelekea katika mkondo mzuri. Tukitazama maoni yao kulingana na jinsi mwaka huu wa mwaka 2024 umekuwa, asilimia kubwa ya 64 hawajaridhika. Wamesema ya kwamba kwa kadri 22, waliosema ilikuwa mwaka nzuri ni asilimia 14. Tukiangazia masuala ya maeneo ambayo yamesema imekuwa mwaka mbaya zaidi, maeneo ya magharibi ambao wamesema asilimia 69, maeneo ya kati ambayo imetajwa na asilimia 69, maeneo ya pwani asilimia 68, maeneo ya Nairobi asilimia 68. Hasa wanawake ndio wametaja mwaka huu kama mwaka mbaya zaidi, ikitajwa na asilimia 68. Wazee walio na umri wa miaka wa 36 hadi 45 pia hawajaridhika na huu mwaka, kama asilimia 73 wanaotaja kwamba imekuwa ni mwaka mbaya zaidi. Kulingana na wale ambao walitaja kama ni mwaka nzuri, asilimia kubwa idadi ilikuwa vijana wa miaka 27 hadi 35. Alafu wale maeneo ni kama maeneo ya kaskazini mashariki ilitajwa na asilimia 23, maeneo ya bonde la ufa asilimia 16, maeneo ya mashariki asilimia 15. Tukiangazia jinsi tukikadiria kutoka mwaka wa 2022 hadi wakati huu, tumeona kila mwaka tukiangazia mwaka wa 22, asilimia 50 ya Wakenya walisema ilikuwa mwaka mbaya. Mwaka jana asilimia 62 na mwaka huu asilimia 66. Sasa hiyo inaonyesha kwamba watu hawajaridhika zaidi. Kila mwaka inaonekana inakuja na changamoto yake. Na tukiangazia mwaka unaokuja wa 2025, katika ile kuwa na optimistic, asilimia 30 ya Wakenya wana imani ya kwamba itakuwa mwaka mzuri. Ingaje asilimia 12 wanasema itakuwa tu sawa, itakuwa tu jinsi mwaka huu tunaomaliza ilivyokuwa. Asilimia 22 wanaikadiria itakuwa mwaka mbaya zaidi, na asilimia 36 hawana maoni, hawajui itakuwa kama itakuwa mbaya ama itakuwa nzuri. Maeneo ambayo wako na ile optimism ya juu ni kama maeneo ya Nyanza, maeneo ya Western na maeneo ya Eastern. Na wanaume pia asilimia 32 wana imani ya kwamba huu mwaka ambao inakuja itakuwa mwaka nzuri zaidi. Na tena wale vijana wa mwaka wa 18 hadi 26 wamekuwa na maoni ya kwamba mwaka wa 2025 itakuwa mwaka nzuri zaidi. Wao ndio wako na hiyo hisia kuliko watu wote. Na jambo la mwisho tulikuwa tumeuliza watu ni kwa nini wanahisia ya kwamba mwaka ujao utakuwa mwaka nzuri zaidi. Baadhi ya mambo ambayo wameyataja ni kulingana na masuala ya uchumi, kwamba uchumi itaimarika, mapato yao pia itaimarika, nchi itaendelea kuona maendeleo kila upande, alafu tutakuwa na amani 14%, wakisema amani itazidi kuimarika, biashara zao zikiimarika na wengine kupata kazi 1%, 10% wakisema watapata kazi. Na kwa wale ambao wako na maoni tofauti kulingana na matarajio yao ya mwaka ujao, baadhi wanasema uchumi bado itazidi kuzoroteka, na tena wanasema mapato yao itazidi kupungua, biashara zao zitazidi kudidimia. Imetajwa hapo na 9%. Wengine wanasema hawatapata kazi 9%. Wanatarajia kutakuwa na majangwa na njaa, na kutakuwa ama uongozi mbaya ambao inaendelea, imetajwa na 5%. Ushuru ambao inatozwa wanasema bado itazidi kutozwa sana, na kuna 1% ambao wanakisia pengine kazi wataachiliwa. Sasa hiyo tu ni kwa mtasari jinsi tulifanya utafiti na matokeo yake. Asanteni. Francis Owenga, I believe I've answered you. Thank you very much, everyone. Lynn, what to you? Thank you very much. We can leave at our own pleasure. But of course, we've taken note of the email addresses shared. We are going to send this in a short while. Thank you and Happy New Year in advance.